Welcome to the assembly video for our graveyard cupcake wrapper. It's a very simple little piece. It's actually made up of 3 layers. You can see here in front of me how these will work. Very easy to mass produce. If you are using a Cricut Explorer or a Cricut Maker, just specify how many. It'll lay out the pieces for you. So if you're making a dozen or however many, again, these cut out pretty quick. I think it only took me about maybe 2 minutes to get just one of these cut out. And that was, in between talking to my mom and this and that. So very simple project. We're gonna jump right in here. Now, because it is simple, I'm gonna take some time here to do a little bit of inking. I always like to do this during the freebie videos, just because it's, well, just a little added bonus. I don't like to bore you guys with my inking on the larger projects, so we'll save it for little projects like this. We do have an article on our site that sort of, links you to the YouTube videos that have inking in them, and this will probably be added to that list. So anyway, with this, I'm gonna hit this with a little bit of a red. Again, with the ghosts, that's actually my garage door to the studio vibrating in the wind. Essentially, all we're doing here is using these little felt applicators that are actually made by Ranger, and just applying a little bit to just this little area here where I have my finger, and just simply rubbing this applicator across the surface of the paper very gently. The more ink you put on here, the more ink will eventually transfer onto the paper, and there is an element of pressure as well. If you ease up on the pressure, you're going to apply less ink. If you push down harder, which will kind of also require an opposite force, being this hand that's holding this, kind of pushing it up towards you. If it's kind of flimsy in your hand, you won't get as much application on there, because you see how much it jiggles and moves. So if you hold it nice and firm, especially out here towards the end where the ink is being applied, when you push down harder with this finger, you're definitely going to get a lot more ink onto the paper surface. So if you want less, kind of hold it back further, and then it doesn't rely so much on this hand. You can actually control the amount of ink you put on depending on where you hold the paper. Okay, so with this, with it being Halloween, I don't mind putting a lot of ink on things, because Halloween's kind of a grungy holiday. Okay, so just getting the tips there. You can see that probably a little bit better on a white background, like so. And again, totally optional. Don't have to do this, but it definitely adds a nice touch. So these ink pads, people have asked, what do I do with them? I typically try to use them up as much as I can. I'll save them until they're just really destroyed. Especially going to happen when you're working and inking glitter paper, that these things get really torn up, and that's okay. And I've heard some of our dreamers actually will just go out and buy felt, and with their cutter just cut little squares. I think that these are probably the perfect size, so you'd want to cut them to about 1 inch wide and about, well, it's about 1 1/4 inch wide, 1 inch or 1 3/4 inches high. Okay, so the grass section here, there's a lot of little nooks and crannies in here. I'm not going to obsess about getting ink on every single section of this, okay? So what I'm probably going to do is just focus on maybe creating a little gradient effect, maybe halfway up the little grass blade here, so that it kind of goes from a darker to a lighter color as you work your way down each of these. And again, it's very much a muscle memory sort of thing. If you play an instrument or if you crochet, it's just that little muscle memory, just kind of, it's really just a quick stroke. When I first started inking, it was a lot slower, way more meticulous, but ultimately that really didn't give me the desired look. It was just too heavy in certain areas, and I feel like this quick little stroke gives me exactly what I need when I ink the desired look that I'm looking for. Now that doesn't mean that you have to ink this way. You can ink however you see fit, whatever looks good to you. I always say, well, I don't always say it, but I've said it before, inking is kind of like makeup, less is more. I don't wear makeup, but I've heard that in the makeup world. Okay, so just again, and if you see some uneven areas that you're not happy with, just go back and touch them up a little bit. Okay, now with something like this, if you want, you can also just kind of very gently stroke it like so, using your table as kind of a counter force here. And that's going to allow you to get more ink onto the surface of the paper. Okay, so putting this together, very simple. On the orange piece, which is our first piece, you'll notice that there's a little tab here. And essentially all you need to do is just glue that tab to the opposite side. And I have this glue bottle. This is not my typical glue bottle, but I really don't need to use a lot of glue, so I just pulled this out because my other one was clogged. Okay, we'll throw a little bit of glue on there. Drag that glue out to the very edge of our tab, bring over the other side, and just get that glued in place. Now you are going to want to hold this in your hand. I would not advise putting this flat on your surface and pressing down that way, because that may basically eliminate its roundness. Obviously you'll get some not so good looking folds on this, but give this a second to set. And then we're going to take the rest of the layers here and just kind of wrap them around. Okay. So you can see here that along the top of our first layer, we do have some shadow elements for these pieces here. And you can see that this end piece is going to line up with that little seam there. Now, as you go, the little shadow area behind it, it's going to be offset a little bit. So it's almost like a real drop shadow, so to speak. So essentially, all you want to focus on is getting this bottom strip in place. I wouldn't worry too much. I mean, you can throw a little bit of glue, like maybe just about a third of the way up the little tombstones here. But I would focus my efforts here on this little area at the bottom that kind of joins all these into one piece. And it's okay if you go a little bit heavier with the glue here as well, because there's a lot of resistance here, and we want to make sure that this thing stays put. Okay, so just line up this very edge here with that seam. Get that in place first. Okay, kind of press that down, and then work your way around, making sure that the bottom stays nice and lined up with the bottom of our orange shadow layer. The rest of this, again, doesn't really matter if it's not perfectly aligned. It's just a cupcake wrapper anyway. And actually, if you don't glue these down, they'll kind of stand up and away from that first layer a little bit and create a little bit of interest. There's a little bit of shadow there. It's kind of playing off that light. Okay, so there we have that. Cupcake wrappers coming together. See how the inking really kind of sets it apart from the foreground and creates a little bit more interest too. Okay, so that just leaves our little grass layer. And once we get this on here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to train these a little bit just to make them stick out and make this a lot more dimensional. But essentially this one just goes around the very bottom, just like we did with the second layer. So we'll go ahead and get our glue onto this piece here. And I really wouldn't put the glue higher than just this bottom section here. We want this grass to be kind of free flowing so that we can train it and kind of make it look cool. Okay, so get that lined up with that very edge there. And again, these are cupcake wrappers. They're going to get ruined. Don't worry too much about perfection here. Do your best. The kids will love these, so will the adults. They look really cool, very unique, and fun to make. Okay, so just make sure that's all touching there, and you can see how cool that looks. And then while I'm holding this shut here, I'm going to grab myself a dowel, probably a 1/4 inch, maybe a 3/8 inch. I guess it doesn't really matter that much. But as I'm holding this down, grab the little grass and just take it and kind of train it outward. Give it a little bit of dimension, separate it from those scary tombstones. Okay, doing the big ones first here while I'm still holding this back. And then these little ones here, you can almost kind of just bend them out with your finger. It might be kind of hard to get a dowel in there. Not really. You can technically still kind of wrap it around the dowel. And that works nice. Look at that. Very cool. And again, if you're making a ton of these and you don't have time to train every single one of these, they're still going to be really cool. And you could say get your husband, boyfriend, girlfriend, wife, whoever it may be, friend, child, get them involved in helping you mass produce these for your upcoming Halloween party. So that's it, guys. Very simple project. If you enjoyed making this with me, head on over to our YouTube channel and hit that subscribe button. While you're there, hit the little bell so that you get notifications anytime we release a new project, whether it be free or paid. And if you make this or anything from our latest bundle, our Frightfully Fun SVG bundle, the second Halloween bundle, we'd love to see it. So head over to your Facebook, do a search for Dreaming Tree Group, or you can type in this URL, it'll take you right there. But oh, and by the way, our next freebie is going to feature a special 8-year-old guest. So don't miss that. And that should come out probably about 3 or 4 days after our next release. So anyway, happy Halloween to everybody, and I look forward to crafting with you again.